All right, let's talk about the book of Ephesians. You know it, right? It's one of those foundational books in the New Testament, all about grace and unity and all that good stuff. But what if it's also something of a crime scene? Seriously. There's this really fascinating theory that says if you look close enough, you can find fingerprints, clues to a story that somebody, a long time ago, tried very hard to cover up.
I mean, what if this book we think we know so well isn't what it seems at all? What if it's actually layered, like an archaeological dig in text form? And what if it holds the key to understanding this total theological firebrand from early Christianity? We're talking about a guy whose ideas were so out there, they were eventually branded as heresy. To even start to unpack this, we've got to get to know him first.
So to really get this theory, you have to meet the main character in this whole drama, a guy named Marcion of Sinope. Now, back in the 2nd century, he was a big deal, a wealthy ship owner, a really well-known Christian thinker. But here's the thing, Marcion wasn't your average everyday Christian. Oh no, he had this idea that was so radical it was going to shake the early church right to its very foundations.
Okay, so at the very heart of his teaching was this absolutely shocking claim. He said that the God of the Old Testament, the one who created the physical world, the one who gave the law to Moses, was actually a lesser, kind of flawed being. He argued that this creator God was a totally different being from the true, loving Father that Jesus talked about. Yeah, two different gods.
And this idea of two gods, this radical split, was absolutely central to everything he believed. So on one side, you have the creator God. Marcion called him the demiurge. This is the god of strict law, of judgment, of this messy, imperfect, material world. But then, on the other side, you've got the real God, the Father of Jesus. This God is all about grace, mercy, and the spiritual world. And for Marcion, there was just no way these two could be the same being. They were totally incompatible.
Okay, so you've got this wild two gods framework in your head. Now, how in the world does this connect back to the book of Ephesians? Well, this is where it gets really interesting. The theory basically says that the letter is just littered with theological fingerprints, little clues that point straight back to Marcion's very unique, very controversial view of the universe.
So the source behind this theory points to a bunch of core themes in Ephesians that it says are just screaming Marcion. We're talking about things like a really sharp contrast between faith and the law, the idea of a secret gospel that's just now being revealed, and even these specific kind of philosophical terms like fullness and wisdom, words that were, all the rage in theological circles back in the 2nd century.
All right, let's look at the first major clue, and it is a doozy. Ephesians chapter 2, verse 15 says, and I'm quoting here, that Christ came, quote, abolishing the law. Whoa. I mean, if you're on the hunt for Marcion's ideas, a line like that is like a giant flashing neon sign. You just can't ignore it.
Yeah, this is not a subtle hint. For Marcion, getting rid of the Creator's law wasn't just some side point. It was the entire reason Jesus came in the first place. So the fact that Ephesians just comes right out and says it so bluntly, well, that's what the source for this theory calls a very strong and characteristic piece of the puzzle.
Okay, moving on to the next clue. This one is another one of those strange, very specific phrases you find in the book. The text talks about the ruler of the power of the air. Now, that's obviously not talking about the Roman emperor or some king on earth, right? No, according to the theory, this is pointing to something cosmic.
And in Marcion's worldview, who is this ruler? Well, it's the demiurge, that lesser creator god from the Old Testament. He's the guy in charge of the physical world and all its lower spiritual forces. So for people who support this theory, that phrase, ruler of the power of the air, it fits Marcion's theology like a key clicking perfectly into a lock.
And this theme of a cosmic battle just keeps going. The text goes on to describe Jesus being seated up in the heavens, far above all rule and authority and power and dominion. It lists them all out. So what exactly are these powers?
Well, according to this theory, we're not talking about earthly governments here at all. Nope. This is a list of a whole hierarchy of cosmic forces. Basically, the spiritual minions of that creator God, the demiurge. And the message? It's crystal clear. Jesus has completely triumphed over this entire cosmic structure, proving that the true God of grace is supreme. The clues even get into the idea of the body of Christ. Now, the source for this theory finds it really telling that Ephesians puts so much weight on the church being the body. Think about it from Marcion's point of view. If the material world is flawed and created by a lesser God, a resurrected physical body for Jesus is, well, it's a problem. So what's the solution?
You need a new spiritual body, and that's the community of believers, the church. It's a perfect fit for his theology.
And you see it really similar logic when you look at how the temple is talked about. The actual physical temple in Jerusalem, the one that was so central to Judaism, it's just not there. The focus has shifted completely to building a spiritual temple, one made out of people. Again, for someone like Marcion, who thought the Old Testament God was flawed, why would you care about his physical house? It makes total sense to move on. The source even calls this detail quite marcionite.
Okay, so let's take a step back. We've seen a bunch of clues, right? An abolished law, a cosmic ruler of the air, a defeated spiritual hierarchy, and this intense focus on a spiritual body and a spiritual temple. When you line all that up, what does it all mean? What is this theory really claiming happened to the book of Ephesians? All right, here's the ultimate claim. The theory says that Ephesians is a layered text. It started out originally as a purely marcionite letter. But then, down the road, when Marcion's ideas were officially declared a heresy, scribes from the, let's call it the mainstream church, had a choice. They didn't just throw the text away. Instead, they edited it. They kind of sanded down the sharpest edges, softened the most radical parts, and added their own material to make it fit their theology. And that edited version is the one we have in our Bibles today.
So, let's just do a quick recap of the evidence. The whole case for a Marcionite version of this letter rests on these key fingerprints, right? The abolishing the law part, the language that seems to point to a lesser creator God, that demiurge, the whole hierarchy of defeated angelic powers, and that shift to a purely spiritual body and a secret gospel. You put it all together, and that's the argument for a hidden history buried right inside the text.
And really, that brings us to the big takeaway here. This theory, whether you buy it or not, completely changes how you look at a book like Ephesians. It's not just a simple letter anymore. It's this fascinating artifact of conflict, of debate in the early days of Christianity. It's a powerful reminder that these ancient texts, they can have really complex hidden layers. And it leaves you wondering, doesn't it? What other hidden stories might be waiting out there, locked away in the pages of texts we think we know so well?